And we are back, Adventure Blur here. Hello. So with Hilda being on hiatus until 2020, I decided to go look for shows like it that I would enjoy. It has been a very long and very hard road. Mostly because most of them are only on DVD, are not online, and I ain't got no $20 bill to throw at Walmart, so...
No money, no parts, no deal.
Yeah, it took a while. Then I came across one called Amphibia, that's going to be on Disney Channel. That already raised some red flags because I am not the biggest fan of Disney Channel. It does have Star Wars Resistance on there, and Rebels before that, and Phineas and Ferb, so I guess I'll give them a pass. Just not a fan of some of the stuff they've done in the past. But this show looked pretty good, and when I was reading, it sounded really interesting. And I watched like one of the first clips, it was like the little clip of the first episode, and it didn't really sell me on it. I just didn't do anything for me. I wasn't sure about it. But I still decided to give it a chance, especially once I found out recently, like 4 days ago, that it was all online for pretty much free. So, after 3 days of non-stop watching and binging of this show from episode 1 all up until episode 20, I can safely say, this show is actually amazing. And I love it. There's quite a bit to talk about when it comes to this show, so let's get started. The show's premise is pretty simple. After opening a magical music box, a girl named Anne is transported to a world full of frogs and toads that are human-like, and she has to survive in that world. That's not really a sentence I ever thought I would say, but it works! First off, I really want to go over the characters of the show because that's really what makes this show this show. For me, I honestly loved all the characters in the show. There wasn't a single one I disliked or hated or found annoying. In stuff like Star Wars The Clone Wars, which is probably my all-time favorite show, or Hilda, which is another favorite of mine, there's always one or two characters that annoy me or I just don't like at all. With this, however, there isn't a character I dislike. They are all great characters and are fun to see show up, even if it's just a one-off episode. From like the main characters like Anne or Sprig, which are probably my favorite characters of the show, to even some of the more obscure characters like Wally or the Mayor that show up time to time. They're all great characters that I really enjoy watching and seeing interact with the other characters in the world. In particular, the Mayor, he's basically King Dedede with a different voice, and I'm here for that. That is amazing.
This is bad, Toady. People hate us!
With a passion, sir.
It's as if embezzling money from the town makes you the bad guy. Oh.
Even characters who are basically one-offs like Soggy Joe all have great scenes and appearances that make them so memorable. In particular, Soggy Joe, I already mentioned him, but his scene at the very end of Anne vs. Wild, I won't spoil it, but that exchange is still one of the best parts of the entire series. You just have to experience it for yourself. It's so great. This sort of goes into my next point. The humor is perfection. I rarely go through an episode without laughing at least 1 or 2 times. There's just so many like little subtle jokes to over-the-top humor that just works. There's gonna be a joke, at least one joke for you in each episode. That's just how the show's written, and it works so well. Now I could argue the plot kind of suffers because of this, because the humor is much more front and center than the plot of the story is. But that's not to say it's a bad thing. The humor works great. It honestly kind of reminds me of something like Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, where it's very much, it does have the story aspects, but it's got a lot of humor that adds to the story in the world even more. Also, there was a high ground joke in one of the episodes, so...
Well, I've got the moral high ground! What?
Of course I'm going to love it. And there are a ton of Easter eggs references in this show. I already have one video playing on, and this doesn't even cover half of them. Every episode seems to have some sort of Easter egg or reference to a movie or another Disney show or book or anything in between. There's just jokes and humor for pretty much anything you can think of there. To the point where I think that years after this show is done, people will still be going through the episodes finding new Easter eggs. So that's great. And even though the show is definitely not super story driven, the story it has is still great and something I always look forward to every time I start an episode. For the most part, the show is just slice of life about living in a frog world. But every once in a while, you get these little tidbits, these foreshadowings and hints about something bigger, and when those moments do pay off, it is always great. And there's a lot of payoff in this show when it comes to that. From Anne's story, to whatever Hop Pop's up to the mayor, everyone sort of has these little foreshadowings and hints early on that lead into something greater later, which is just fun. And that's a great word describing the show. It's fun to watch. It may not be the deepest or most complex or darkest show ever, but it is overall a blast to watch, and it's something I cannot recommend enough. I will have a link to episode 1 in the description. Amphibia is a show that I just cannot wait to talk about more on the channel, so you will definitely be seeing and hearing a lot more about it soon. And as always, this is Adventure Blur, and I will see you next time.